British art for much of the 1970s and 80s was kind of marginalised. The international centre of gravity for the world of art was New York, and the Germans and the Italians certainly made a big splash in the 1980s and the 90s. So British art has now come in for a revival, and I think it's easy enough to sort of suggest that the general prosperity of England and its return to sort of an economic equilibrium has also been accompanied by a revival of interest in the art that was produced there. And one of those artists who wasn't necessarily the best known artist from that period, Lynn Chadwick, has a major sculpture in our 25th of June auction. He started in the 1950s. He was actually an architect, worked in an architectural office as a draftsman, and after the war he kind of fell into art through design. He was nominated and was selected for inclusion in the Venice Biennale initially in 1952. In fact, he participated in the Venice Biennale on 3 occasions. His work is contrary to the prevailing tastes and fashions of his period, and if you think about it, his work runs through English art at the same time as Hockney and in America Warhol. So there's this kind of pop art screaming at you, and at the same time there's Chadwick doing these rather discreet and rather low-key objects. But the sensibility which Chadwick created, which he then developed and nurtured, and which grew up in that period after the Second World War, when England was going through some tough times and where there's a sense of austerity and a sense of grit. It was really communicated very well by Chadwick, and as he develops his work, that wasteland feel, that T.S. Eliot's wasteland feel that you sense in his work from the 60s, gradually moderates. But recently, the levels of interest in his work have returned to the situation that it was in the 50s and the 60s when he was such a big name. So the item which is in our sale, the sculpture, is a completely typical example of his later work. You see a couple, a very highly stylized couple, who are striding through, in a very purposeful manner, they stride through the landscape. Interestingly enough, you'll see that this is typical for Chadwick, that he's turned the faces into a block and a triangle. And this is his signature treatment. It actually has the effect of engaging the viewer in a way that the figures actually gain character. Chadwick's prices have increased radically in the last few years, and he now regularly sells sculptures in the international sales for in excess of $1 million. We think that the sculpture we have is a fine and a very classic, very typical example, and a very, very good quality example of his work.